We're back with part 4 of this week's reading of the Messianic Jewish Family Bible, Tree of Life Version, TLV, and we are completing the book of Ezekiel this week, and that those chapters include chapter 33 to 48 this week. And we are now already at chapter 41, and chapter 40 we were discussing the measurements of a new temple. And this we're sure he's talking about the prophecy of the third temple. Chapter 41, the inner sanctuary. Then he brought me to the temple and measured the pillars 6 cubits wide on one side, 6 cubits wide on the other side, which was the width of the tent. The width of the entrance was 10 cubits. The sides of the entrance were 5 cubits on one side and 5 cubits on the other side. He measured its length 40 cubits and its width 20 cubits. He went to the inner room and measured each pillar of the entrance. 2 cubits the doorway, 6 cubits, and the width of the doorway 7 cubits. When he measured the inner room's length, it was 20 cubits, and the width was 20 cubits in front of the temple. He said to me, "This is the Holy of Holies." When he measured the wall of the house, it was 6 cubits, and the width of every chamber was 4 cubits, surrounding the house on every side. There were 33 side chambers. There were supports in the wall which belonged to the house for the side chambers all around, so that they were not supported by the wall of the house. The side chambers were wider as they wound about higher and higher, because the winding about of the house went higher and higher round about the house. Therefore the width of the house expanded. One went up from the lowest row to the highest by the way of the middle. I saw also that the house had a raised platform all around. The foundations of the side chambers were a full rod of 6 cubits up to the joint. The thickness of the outer wall of the side chambers was 5 cubits. The space between the side chambers of the house and the outer chambers was 20 cubits wide all around the house on every side. The door of the side chambers were toward the space, one door towards the north and another door towards the south. The width of the space was 5 cubits all around. The building that was before the separate area at the side toward the west was 70 cubits wide. The wall of the building was 5 cubits thick all around, and its length was 90 cubits. When he measured the house, it was 100 cubits long. The separate area and the building with its walls was 100 cubits long, and the width of the face of the house and the separate area towards the east was 100 cubits. When he measured the length of the building facing the separate area behind it, and with its galleries on each side, it was 100 cubits. Now the inner sanctuary and the porches of the court, the thresholds, the shuttered windows, and the galleries all around in 3 stories opposite the threshold were paneled with wood all around, from the ground up to the windows. Even the windows were covered over the space above the door as far as the inner house, and on all the wall outside, all around all around inside and outside by measurement. It was made with cherubim and a palm tree. A palm tree was between cherub and cherub. Every cherub had 2 faces, the face of a man toward the palm tree on one side, and the face of a young lion toward the palm tree on the other side. Thus was it made on all the house all around. The cherubim and the palm trees were made from the ground up above the door and on the wall of the temple. The temple's doorposts were square. Now the front of the sanctuary had something resembling an altar, 3 cubits high and 2 cubits long, made of wood. Its corners, its base, and its sides were also of wood. He said to me, "This is the table of the presence of Adonai." The temple and the inner sanctuary each had double doors. The doors each had 2 turning leaves, 2 leaves for one door and 2 leaves for the other. Cherubim and palm trees were made on them, on the doors of the temple, just like those made on the walls. There were thick beams of wood on the face of the porch outside. These were shuttered windows and palm trees on one side, and on the other on the other, on the sides of the porch, the side chambers of the house, and the thick beams. And that's the end of chapter 41. Chapter 42, we're going to talk about the outer courtyard. So remember, that was the inner sanctuary. And now we're going to talk about the outer courtyard. And when we talked about the outer courtyard, when we were reading that in Revelation, we were talking about they were told not to measure that part. He led me to the outer courtyard toward the north. I'm going to go again to Revelation 11, verse 12. But do not measure the court outside the temple. Leave it out, because it has been given to the nations, and they shall trample the holy city for 42 months. Okay, reading chapter 42, the outer courtyard. He led me out to the outer courtyard toward the north. He brought me to the chamber that was opposite the separate area in the opposite building towards the north. The length of the building with the door on the north was 100 cubits, and the width of 50 cubits. Opposite the 20 cubit space belonging to the inner court, and opposite the pavement belonging to the outer court was gallery by the north. The upper chambers were narrower, because the galleries took more away from them than the lower and the middle ones in the building. For they were in 3 stories, and had no pillar like the pillars of the courtyards. Therefore more space was taken away than from the lower and the middle floors. In comparison with the ground, a wall that was outside by the side of the chambers towards the outer court in front of the chambers was 50 cubits in length. And I'm sorry I had to pause there. I kind of was losing my voice there for a second. For the chambers that were towards the outer court were 50 cubits long, while those facing the temple were 100 cubits. Below these chambers was the entrance on the east side, as one enters them from the outer courtyard. In the thickness of the wall of the courtyard towards the east in front of the separate area, and in front of the building, there were chambers. The passageway in front of them were similar to the chambers on the north, as long and wide as them, with all their exits and their similar arrangements and doors. Corresponding to the doorways of the chambers on the south, there was a doorway at the head of the passageway, away directly in front of the wall toward the east, as one enters them. Then he said to me, the north chambers and the south chambers, which are before this separate area, they are the holy chambers, where the Kohanim, who are near to Adonai, eat the most holy things. There they will put the most holy things, the grain offering, the sin offering, and the guilt offering, for the place is holy. Once the Kohanim measured all around. When he measured the east side with a measuring rod, it was 500 rods, with the measuring rod round about. When he measured the north side, it was 500 rods by the measuring rod. When he measured the south side, it was 500 rods with the measuring rod. Then he turned about to the west side and measured 500 rods with the measuring rod. So he measured the 4 sides. It had a wall all around them all around. The length was 500, the width was 500, to make a distinction between the holy and the profane. Now, chapter 43. The glory returns, and the last section of 43 is the altar. So we're going to start with the glory returns. Then he led me to the gate looking east, and behold, the glory of God of Israel was coming from the east. His voice was like the sound of many waters. The earth was radiant with his glory. The appearance of the vision that I saw was like the vision that I saw when I came to destroy the city. The visions were like the vision that I saw by the river Kebar. So I fell on my face, and the glory of Adonai came into the house by way of the gate facing the east. The Ruach took me up and brought me into the inner court. Then behold, the glory of Adonai filled the house. Then I heard someone speaking to me from the house. While a man was standing beside me, he said to me, Son of man, this is the place of my throne, the place of the soles of my feet, where I will dwell in the midst of Bani Israel forever. The house of Israel will no longer defile my holy name, neither they nor their kings by their prostitution or by the corpses of their kings in their high places. Whenever they set their threshold next to my threshold, and their doorpost next to my doorpost, with only a wall between me and them, they defiled my holy name by their abominations that they committed. So I have finished them off in my fury. Now let them put away their prostitution in the corpses of their kings far from me. Then I will dwell among them forever. You, son of man, describe the house to the house of Israel, so they will be ashamed of their iniquities. Let them measure accurately if they are ashamed of all they have done. Sketch out the house for them, its layout, its exits, and its entrances, its complete design with all its ordinances and all its laws. Write it down in their sight so they may observe its complete design and all its ordinances and do them. This is the Torah of the house. The whole territory around it on top of the mountain will be most holy. Behold, this is the Torah of the house. The last section is the altar. These are the measurements of the altar by cubits, a cubit being a normal cubit plus a handbreadth. Its gutter will be a cubit deep and a cubit wide. Its rim will be one span surrounding the edge. This will be the base of the altar from the base on the ground to the lower ledge will be 2 cubits and the width 1 cubit. From the smaller ledge to the larger ledge will be 4 cubits and the width a cubit. The altar hearth will be 4 cubits high. 4 horns will project upward from the hearth. The hearth will be 12 cubits long by 12, with 4 sides square. The ledge with 14 cubits long and 14 wide, with 4 sides square. The border surrounding it will be a half a cubit, and its bottom will be a cubit all around. Its steps will face east. Then he said to me, Son of man, thus says Adonai Elohim, these are the statutes for the altar on the day when they will construct it, in order to offer burnt offerings on it, and to sprinkle blood on it. Give a young bull for a sin offering to the Levitical Kohanim, who are from the offspring of Zadok, who come near to me to minister to me. It is a declaration of Adonai. You are to take some of its blood and put it on the 4 horns, on the 4 corners of the ledge and on the border around it, so you will purify it and make atonement for it. Take the bull of the sin offering and burn it in the appointed place of the house outside the sanctuary. On the second day, offer a male goat without blemish as a sin offering. They will purify the altar as they purified it with the bull. When you have finished purifying it, offer a young bull without blemish and a ram out of the flock without blemish. Present them before Adonai. The Kohanim will cast salt upon them. They will offer them up as a burnt offering to Adonai. Every day for 7 days prepare a goat as a sin offering. They will prepare a young bull and a ram out of the flock without blemish. They will make atonement for the altar and cleanse it for 7 days. This is how they will consecrate it. When they have completed the days from the 8th day and onward, the Kohanim will make your burnt offering upon the altar, as well as the fellowship offerings. Then I will accept you. It is a declaration of Adonai. And that's the end of chapter 43. Chapter 44, Prince at the Eastern Gate. And only Yeshua can enter through the Eastern Gate, actually. Then he brought me back to the outer gate of the sanctuary looking east. It was shut. Adonai said to me, This is the gate. This gate is to be shut. It must not be opened, and no one may enter through it, for Adonai God of Israel has entered through it, so it is to be kept shut. Only the prince, since he is a prince, will sit there to eat bread before Adonai. He will enter by way of the porch of the gate and go out the same way. Levitical priesthood. Then he brought me by way of the north gate to the front of the house. I looked, and behold, the glory of Adonai filled the house of Adonai. So I fell upon my face. Adonai said to me, Son of man, set your heart, behold with your eyes and hear with your ears all that I say to you concerning all of the ordinances of Adonai's house and all its laws. Set your heart to the entrance of the house with all exits of the sanctuary. Say to the rebellious, to the house of Israel, Thus says Adonai Elohim, Enough of your abominations, house of Israel. You brought in foreigners, uncircumcised in heart and uncircumcised in flesh, to be in my sanctuary, to profane it, my house, when you offer my bread, the fat and the blood. They have broken my covenant. To add to all your abominations, you have not kept charge of my holy things, but you have set keepers of my service in my sanctuary to please yourselves. Thus says Adonai Elohim, no foreigner uncircumcised in heart and uncircumcised in flesh may enter my sanctuary, not any foreigner who is among Bani Israel. For the Levites who went far from me, then Israel went astray after their idols, will bear their iniquity. Yet they will be ministers in my sanctuary, overseers of the gates of the house, and ministering in the house. They will slaughter the burnt offering and the sacrifice for the people. They will stand before them to minister to them. Because they ministered to them before their idols and became a stumbling block of iniquity of the house of Israel, therefore I have lifted up my hand against them. It is the declaration of Adonai. They will bear their iniquity. They will not come near to me to minister to me as Kohanim, nor come near to any of my holy things, to the things that are most holy. They will bear their shame and their abominations which they have committed. Yet I will appoint them to keep charge of the house for all its service and for all that will be done in it. So the Levitical Kohanim, the sons of Zadok, who kept with charge of my sanctuary when Bani Israel wandered from me, will draw near to me to minister to me. They will stand before me to offer me the fat and the blood. It is a declaration of Adonai. They are the ones who will enter my sanctuary and draw near to my table to minister to me. They will keep my charge. It will be that when they enter in at the gates of the inner court, they will be clothed with linen garments. No wool will come on them while they minister in the gate of the inner court and within. They will have linen turbans on their heads and linen underclothes upon their loins. They will not wear anything that causes sweat. Before they go out to the outer court, to the outer courtyard, to the people, they must take off their garments in which they minister and leave them in the holy chambers. They will put on other garments, so they do not consecrate the people while in their garments. They must not shave their heads or let their locks grow long, but must carefully trim the hair of their heads. No Kohen may drink wine before entering the inner court. None may take a widow or a divorced woman as a wife, for they must take virgins of the offspring of the house of Israel, or a widow who is the widow of a Kohen. They will teach my people the difference between the holy and the common, and explain to them the difference between the unclean and the clean. In a lawsuit, they will stand to judge, and judge in accordance with my ordinances. They will keep my laws and my statutes and all my moedim, and keep my Shabbatot holy. The moedim means appointed times. They must not come near a dead person to defile themselves only for him. On the day he goes into the sanctuary, into the inner court, to minister in the sanctuary, he is to offer his sin offering. It is a declaration of Adonai. It will be an inheritance for them. I am their inheritance. Do not give them any possession in Israel, for I am their possession. They will eat the grain offering, the sin offering, and the guilt offering. Every devoted thing in Israel will be theirs. The first of all, the first fruits of everything, and every offering of every kind from all your offerings will belong to the Kohanim. You will also give the Kohen the first of your dough to make a blessing to rest on your house. The Kohanim may not eat any carcass, whether bird or beast, that dies of itself or it is torn. And that's the end of chapter 44. Chapter 45, there's different sections here, and the first one is Levitical land. When you allot the land for inheritance, set apart an offering to Adonai, a holy portion of the land. The length will be 25,000 and the width will be 10,000. It will be holy within all its surrounding borders. Area you are to measure a length of 25,000 and a width of 10,000, in which will be the sanctuary which is most holy. It is to be the holy portion of the land for the Kohanim ministering in the sanctuary who draw near to serve Adonai. It will be a place for the houses as well as a place consecrated for the sanctuary. An area 25,000 long by 10,000 wide will be for the Levites, the ministers of the house. It will be a possession for themselves, 20 chambers. You will give the city possession of an area 5,000 wide by 25,000 long, alongside the offering of the holy allotments. It will be for the whole house of Israel. And the measurement, when we're reading that in chapter 45, verse 1, is about 8 1/3 by 6 3/4 miles. So the prince's allotment, the prince will have a portion on either side of the holy allotment in the city's property adjacent to the holy offering, and the city's property on the west side. Measure will be the homer. The shekel will be 20 gerahs, 20 plus 25 plus 15 shekels will be your mina. This is the offering. You are to set apart a sixth of an ephah out of a homer of wheat, a sixth of an ephah out of a homer of barley, along with a set portion of oil, a bath of oil, as the tithe of a bath for each kor, K-O-R, which is 10 baths or a homer, since 10 baths are a homer, and 1 lamb of the flock out of 200 from well-watered pastures of Israel. These are for the grain offering, burnt offering, and fellowship offering to make atonement for them. It is a declaration of Adonai. All the people of the land must give this contribution to the prince in Israel. It will be the prince's role to give the burnt offerings, grain offerings, drink offerings at the feasts, new moons, and Shabbatot. In all the Moedim of the house of Israel, he will prepare the sin offering, the meal offering, the burnt offering, and the fellowship offering to make atonement for the house of Israel. Offerings for Moedim for the appointed times. Thus says Adonai Elohim, in the first month, in the first day of the month, take a young bull without blemish and purify the sanctuary. The Kohen will take some of the blood of the sin offering and put it on the doorposts of the house, and upon the 4 corners of the ledge of the altar, and upon the posts of the gate of the inner court. So you will do on the 7th day of the month for everyone who sins unintentionally or through ignorance. So you will make atonement for the house. In the first month, in the 14th day of the month, you will have the Passover, a feast of 7 days when matzah will be eaten. On that day, the prince will prepare a bull as a sin offering for himself and for all the people of the land. He will prepare a burnt offering to Adonai for the 7 days of the feast, 7 bulls and 7 rams without blemish daily for 7 days, and a male goat daily for a sin offering. He will prepare a grain offering, an ephah for a bull, an ephah for a ram, and a hin of oil for each ephah. He will do this in the 7th month and the 15th day of the month during the feast for the 7 days for sin offering, as well as burnt offering, grain offering, as well as oil. And I'll be back with the next part.